Hello, everyone. I'm John O'Loughlin. Welcome to McDuff Lives, and welcome to our good friend Hrovje Morić, who is joining us once again. He is the host and publisher of Geopolitics and Empire, a man with an amazing resume who we've uh, gone to now for expertise in many, many areas, and I'm going to enjoy very much our live conversation with no holes, no censorship. We're not worrying about YouTube or anything like that. We're going to speak freely here at McDuff Lives, and so let's get started. Good morning, Hrovje.
Guten Morgen. I'm here with my unicorn coffee cup, Manly, and yeah, how's it going?
Okay, alles gut, alles gut. We are doing well, and thank you. And how about yourself? Everything good?
Everything is good. Let me give a shout out to myself and some of my virtual colleagues. If you didn't know, John and folks, next in about a month's time in Austin, Texas, they're throwing together the very first annual what is called American Liberty Awards. So the website is americanlibertyawards.com. It's hosted by Infowars' Rob Dew. So some of the Infowars people and alternative media are people are throwing this together, and I was shocked to discover I'm in the running from one of the categories. Hrovje Morić for best, what is it now? Best, what is I'm looking it up even. Best analysis broadcast. My name is in there, and then TNT Radio is in one of the category for most trusted broadcast media. So. I'm gonna try and make it out to Texas to that event. Alex Jones will be there among other people, so that's exciting for me.
All right. Well, that's exciting for us too, because it's just more and more connections that we get to enjoy as we try to spread our free speech message all around the world. It's very important, and I congratulate you on that, and wish you every success in the competition. I expect you'll be in the top three at least.
Who knows? But I mean, just to be on the list is pretty cool.
That is very cool indeed. Liberty begins with you. It says behind you on the poster, and that's absolutely true. And uh, this is, I guess, my first topic I wanted to discuss with you is a discussion I had with my wife this morning over coffee, and that is she was looking at an article in the Washington Post, something that she does and I don't, but she she read this article about uh, the reaction. It was posted apparently as a news article, but it was really opinion, and it was a reaction to the Missouri judge's opinion that the administration has to stop talking censorship with social media platforms. And the point of the article, of course, was that, hey, conservatives lie, and we have to protect the country against these lies. So, of course, the government has to be able to talk to the social media platforms in order to make sure that they don't promote these lies, which are dangerous to national security because they are lies about the election. And if you lie about the election, then you are endangering people's belief in the country in the process. And that is a danger to our national security. And of course, those of us that are watching this stuff go on are like horrified. Like, this is the newspaper, Hrovje, that I grew up with. This was what I wanted to read, the comics and the sports pages every day. I was like, love the Washington Post. Well, we know it has quite a history of working with intelligence people going long before I was born. But the interesting thing now is that my wife pointed out was that not only were the comment section on this article very pro censorship, but that also that her and I would say probably my liberal friends, whom I think I still have, hundreds of them, but we don't speak much anymore. But they're also thinking, yeah, this government has to be able to censor social media, or else, you know, those conservative, the ones with noodles for brains are going to get brainwashed, and then they're going to do another MAGA thing. And that's the last thing we need, is another J6. So yes, government, you go ahead and you censor it. Damn it. This is ridiculous. This is not America. I mean, it's crazy. Am I right?
Yeah, the thought I had, I don't want to necessarily get very spiritual or religious. We've done that in the past, but I thought I'd just mention my gut reaction to this is like you mentioned the establishment wanting to censor conservatives, right?
Yeah.
Idiot conservatives, and literally like 20 years ago, and when I was a teenager, 17, and becoming a Christian and reading Bible prophecy. Again, we've mentioned my view before that I view that we're moving towards this global dystopian system, and that it was implied that back in the day it's becoming so boring almost in a way to watch these events unfold, because 20 years ago when a lot of the traditional Christians in their prophecy think, oh, there's going to be this global government and they're going to target specifically Christians or conservatives for speech, right? The enemies of the state will end up being, after they've gone through the various, as we're seeing now, different enemies of the state. They're going to focus on Christians. Those are going to be, and conservatives. Those are going to be the most dangerous enemies of the state that we have to deal with, censor, because it's it's Satan, right? And look what's, as you're saying, Washington Post, conservatives are the most dangerous. And then I was reading today, Yahoo just the other day says U.S. podcast misinformation goes largely unchecked. So they're really trying to bat down the hatches, and in the podcast realm, they're talking about NewsGuard. And if anyone's ever researched NewsGuard, that's a total Pentagon operation. They create these fake cutouts. It's incredible. NewsGuard was headed, I think, by the former NSA head. Then they create all of these fake. Washington Post now it's a front for the establishment. New York Times. Mike Benz. I don't know if you know him. He is the guy to go to. He's been blowing up on Twitter. Freedom. He's the director of the Foundation for Freedom Online. He's explaining all this stuff. He recently described the New York Times as being the buttocks, and then the body being the government. He's like, you can't have the buttocks exist by itself. It's part of the government, and so is Washington Post. And so, yeah, they're coming after conservatives now, John. It's not surprising, but yeah, it's like I said, it's almost it's boring because it's so predictable. Give us at least some interesting psyop.
Well, let me toss this in, and I just was watching an interview from 1983 on YouTube of Congressman Larry McDonald. Now, do you remember him?
Yeah, I think he died, no, in a plane crash or something.
He did, yeah. He died in KAL 007. The Korean Airlines, and I don't remember whether it was a shoot down or what, but I do know that he was killed in that plane crash. But he was what must now be called an old style conservative. And he was being grilled by these two guys, Pat Buchanan and Tom Braden. Tom Braden is a CIA guy. Pat Buchanan, who knows? He probably is too. I don't know. But these two guys are interviewing him on the occasion of his being elected president of the John Birch Society. And I have never really understood the difference between the old conservatives and these what are called the new right. But the new right, these are the neocons. These guys are the ones that want to hijack conservatism and turn it into totalitarianism. And that was what Larry McDonald was all about. And he was telling them, hey, Tom Braden, you're a member of the CFR. And Braden's going like, well, what do you think? That's a conspiracy or something? Well, yes, it is a conspiracy. You can read about it in Tragedy and Hope. You can read about it everywhere. It's not a secret anymore. As a matter of fact, H.G. Wells's Open Conspiracy book told you it was going to be an open conspiracy. So, but they still dig in there and say, oh, that's just a conspiracy theory. But who is the target? The old style conservatives. And perhaps, consider the election of 2016 on the Democrat side when Bernie Sanders was basically, I don't know whether he's a genuine or a Pied Piper leader of the progressive left, but he was definitely talking the talk of a good progressive with all kinds of right on criticism of the Republicans and the establishment Democrats. But that election, I think, was when he was just put out in the cold. I don't know if you saw the memes that went around for a while with him sitting in a lawn chair wearing a warm an Arctic jacket with the fringe and everything. They put him out in the cold, and all the liberals are like thinking, oh, this is our boy, man. We're passing this meme around, but what it was it was just shaming him and saying, you're out. So now all of the progressives are now sit down, shut up, and listen to, Joe Biden and the DNC, because they're going to tell you what you really need to know. And what you really need to know is that Donald Trump is the devil himself. And that's all you need to know. So just stick with us and don't listen to Donald Trump because he's the devil. That, excuse me for, pushing my own opinion on this, but I think that is the cusp of what's going on now with the conservatives, is that anybody that's an old style conservative is now going to be pushed off the table like Bernie was. And that, the uniparty comes together and, starts dictating who's the president next year. And that's the end of our democracy if we still have such a thing. So yeah, it's very important to listen to a voice like Larry McDonald to understand what the real guts of conservatism was. I mean, one of the people I've always loved to study is Douglas MacArthur. He's an old style conservative. Now he's not a politician. He's a military guy, but as a military guy, he's like, let's win the war, go home. It's not, no, we don't need 4 years in Korea. Let's just go defeat them and go home. But they don't, that's the problem. This totalitarian thing that the neocons want to pretend doesn't exist is in fact doing exactly what these old style conservatives have warned us about. So that's my analysis.
I mean, you just I mean, you mentioned it. It's a uniparty. It's this monolithic system, and it's not really left or right. Maybe it never really was, and they can use just like you can use any tool for good or bad, any type of tool, they can use left or right in ways that they want. So the left gives them ammunition to do crazy things. The right, as you mentioned as well, whether it's neocon and they play on the patriotism for war with certain conservatives, and with the left they do other crazy stuff like what they're doing with the whole sexual ideology stuff. And so I think it's always been this global moneyed power that's above that. Then it's a uniparty, it's a monolithic system, so it's not really about they get us to fight, the classic divide and conquer left versus right. And I just did recall something that was irking me last week when you mentioned about liberals, uh, egging on the police state. You had Nigel Farage, right, who did Brexit, and he got debanked. I don't know if you heard that.
I did hear it, but I didn't dig in to see, whether is this really something we should scream bloody murder about, or was there some corporate thing behind
I
the scenes that we really, probably wasn't that big a deal? I don't know.
I think it's what I've been banging on about. It's that algorithm ghetto, the cashless system, and apparently, he had for 40 since 1980 his personal and business account with this bank. And they never said anything. All was normal, and all of a sudden they said we're shutting your bank account, and no other bank in UK will have him.
Wow.
And then, like a day later, some Anglican priest or whatever in UK criticizes transgender ideology, and then his bank shuts him down. And so I think it's just the continuation of what I was talking about um, before. But the interesting thing was I posted Farage's clip on my LinkedIn, which it went like viral. 10,000 people on LinkedIn saw it, which like never happened before. But I put my comment as well that like it doesn't matter about Farage's politics, And then I put my interview with Edwin Black, the Jewish historian who compares what's going on to the Holocaust. It's not me. It's this renowned Jewish historian, Edwin Black, saying this is like the physical Jewish ghettos. It's the algorithm ghetto. And then I saw these liberals on LinkedIn and elsewhere, professionals, business people, egging on, like celebrating Farage being thrown into the algorithm ghetto. So I don't get it. It's kind of like what you're saying earlier. Like, aren't you supposed to be, liberals all about equality and justice? And here you are as hypocrites egging on your ideological adversaries. You're egging them being debanked. How that's not democracy. That's not equity. That's that's total hypocrisy. I wouldn't wish that on my ideological adversaries. And so it's as you said, these are the same people pushing mandatory vaccinations and mandatory masking and debanking, and they're pro-war now. Right, let's give cluster munitions and depleted uranium to Ukraine. Let's it's just yeah it's nuts.
Yeah, it's worse than nuts because these are the people that I placed my hope in for most of my life that we're going to beat these horrible Republicans. I couldn't stand Ronald Reagan. I could not stand George Bush or any of them. And so my hope was in the Democratic Party. I was a big supporter of Obama, and he's he's one of them. They're all of them, and I do appreciate every time we mention Edwin Black and his great work. I've read a number of
Mhm.
his books, and one of them on my show, which was the War Against the Weak, which I've shared a good bit of with comments, and that points out that this eugenics started in America. And the eugenics application in to the Appalachian Mountains is kind of personal to me because I don't live that far away, and I love the Appalachian culture, but the destruction of the Appalachian culture in favor of building a beautiful the Blue Ridge Parkway right across all the tops of all those great beautiful mountains, and but it also accompanied just the destruction of the communities and the lives and the families that were basically in the depression and otherwise forced to move to the cities. And so part of that was the application of eugenic principles to the population in the mountains. They sterilized them. They just went around with trucks and picked them up and said, "You guys need some annual medical exam or something like that." And the next thing you know, they've been sterilized. That these people are the same ones that are threatening the world with nuclear war right now. I don't see, uh, you know, well, enough of that. I do admire people that can write these big long books and document everything. I struggled to get my book written about my dad. I'm glad I did, and it is well documented. And but the work that's puts into it, I think you're either a writer or you're not a writer. And I have to say, I'm not a writer. Well, let me take a moment to thank our friend Win Tai over in Taiwan, who says hello. And KAL 007 was shot down by Soviet air defense after intruding into the Russian space and refused the order to land. Okay, so that's what happened to Larry McDonald and 007 KAL. One of many, many suspicious air crashes with important people on them. Kind of reminds you of the Titanic.
Yeah, by the way, you should maybe it might be a tall order. Try getting Edwin Black on. That would be interesting. I haven't contacted him since I interviewed him, but maybe I should.
Well, I started to read the one, I think the most important one, about the the agreement. What's the name of that agreement? The transfer agreement.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And he said in the beginning of it, don't read this unless you're going to read it cover to cover. And I respect that, so I stopped. But I think that the idea of the transfer agreement explains so much history that people just can't see. Like me, for instance, I had no idea who Theodor Herzl was. And now I've read, his books about Zionism, and now I understand, that's bizarre. That's amazing. That's mind-blowing. And of course, you can see how the Nazis and the Zionists would have worked together to have a common solution, even though it is a tragic solution for the common people of Germany, Poland, and Europe. The common goal of taking the Jews out of European civilization, and nobody sees that now. It's so many things that our history books are deficient in, and that, of course, has been part of my mission too, is to try to expose people to the great writers like Edwin Black and anyway, and your work as well. So let's move somewhere else. I'll tell you what. You pick a topic.
Well, I had something that I was going to share that I pulled up, because you put Mexico on as one of the topics we touch on, because I'm here and I'm a Mexican national, and this it's somewhat related to eugenics and censorship, and it blew me away. I read this story over the weekend, just completely shocked. Again, not surprised, but shocked, and I've been alluding to this, this coming now to the rest of the world, and it's here now. This whole trans woke stuff, and there's an article from Spiked Online. I think it's this more conservative outlet, and the article's titled "Mexico has made it a crime to tell the truth." 2 politicians have been convicted for speaking out against trans activism. Imagine this. So you've got 2 politicians or congressmen. So one of them is a former Mexican congressman and civil society leader called Rodrigo Ivan Cortez. And so Mexico made it a specific crime in 2020. So just 3 years ago, to criticize this transgender LGBTQ plus to infinity stuff. And he was convicted of last year, I think 2022, of gender-based political violence, and quote digital, symbolic, psychological, and sexual violence, end quote. And so he had tweeted just on Twitter. So on Twitter, in Mexico, he tweeted criticizing a bill that would penalize Christian beliefs on sexuality as hate speech, and then he had referred so there's this Mexican politician who's a man saying he's a woman, trans identifying politician. So he called this man a man, and then so he got into trouble. And then another guy whose name is Gabriel Quadri, classical liberal congressman, was also convicted of gender-based political violence for tweets. And then what happened to him, his punishment, it says, was dystopian, designed to publicly humiliate him. He was forced to issue a public apology drafted by the court. He had to post on his Twitter a summary of his conviction for 15 days at 2 set times per day. and had to complete a course on gender-based political violence, effectively submitting himself for re-education. Now, he lost his appeal, his options for justice in Mexico. Nothing else he could do. He's going supranational. He's taking his case to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights. But just now, for if you're in Mexico and you're a Mexican, tweeting that a man is a man and a woman is a woman, you will now be legally punished by the state, which is absolutely insane. And I've been saying this is criminalization of Christianity. You know, back in the day in the Soviet Union, in Mao's China, maybe still today in China, in some parts of China, they would come out and say, you know, we're banning religion, we're banning Christianity, we're banning whatever. Now they don't do that. Now they're doing the same thing, but through the back door. So they're saying if you criticize, if you espouse your Christian beliefs on these certain topics, you're gonna go to jail or be fined. So if you don't accept LGBT ideology, you know you're in trouble. And then one more thing, I just remember there was another story from over the weekend. A UN independent expert did a report last month where he was saying that um, so he's telling us he knows better about our religions than he does. He says, you know, the Christian and the Jewish and Islamic religions, the Abrahamic religions, they don't know really what, you know, they're supposed to be inclusive, LGBT ideology. And he's saying he wants add teeth to the UN and governments where they should hold individuals accountable if they don't accept LGBT ideology. So how does a Christian accept if the New Testament says, you know, homosexuality is a sin, as is, you know, not being married and having relations or adultery and other stuff? You can't accept the two, but they're saying now if you don't, we want the UN to legally punish you under international law, or you force your nation state that you live in to punish you under UN rules. This is a UN independent expert. And so for me, this is absolutely crazy to, you know, we've seen it in Canada, US, Europe, you know, England, but now in Mexico, I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you know. I mean, Viva Mexico, and we love Mexico and we love Mexican people. You know, my wife's heritage is all from Mexico, and boy, have the Mexican people suffered over the centuries. The the change in leadership in the Catholic Church is, you know, Vatican II has led to where we're at right now, in my not so humble opinion. I don't mind saying that. You know, I was raised Catholic, but it was a different type of Catholic back then, and the ones now have been focused so much into empathy. Empathy. That to me is the key to the liberal acceptance of the LGBTQ plus infinity movement, and you know the addition of new stripes to the pride flag, and these things are engineered, but for some reason they don't see it. They feel that if a person in their heart feels like they are the other sex or a different sex or some sex that they read about in a book, that that is the most genuine expression of themselves that you could ask for, and you should not challenge it in any way. But then they accept the idea that somehow the state needs to
Well,
get involved
let
in
me just
this.
add to that. You know, at the end of the day, this actually doesn't have to. It's not really to do with this gay or lesbian stuff specifically, as you just mentioned. You know, I've interviewed Mary Harrington, who she explains that, you know, feminism, you know, and she specifically discusses, I think, like contraception beginning in the 60s as a technology. That was the first upgrade for women to their bodies. This the first transhumanist technology. So she says that actually feminism is transhumanism. That's the sequence, and that all this trans stuff is basically has to do with transhumanism. And then Simon Elmer, I don't know if you've heard of him. He does great work. He's also British. His Twitter and website is Architects for Social Housing. He's a leftist. I interviewed him, I think back in 2020 or 2021, but he wasn't. It's in my vault. It was never released because afterwards he hadn't been happy with his performance, so he asked me not to release it. Maybe someday it'll come out of the vault. But he just tweets. And he does fantastic work on the COVID stuff. He says, and I caught his tweet from like 2 days ago. He says, trans isn't a demand for human rights. It's the ideology of biopolitics, creating consensus for changes to law that are already being made and whose aim is to place the human being under the authority of the state from the moment it is born, and one day perhaps even earlier. So I think you just hit the nail on the head. And it's about control. It's about transhumanism. And as you just said, they're using people's emotions and feelings.
Yes, very effectively. And that I think if we're going to break through it is where we're going to have to make our inroad is into saying, now understand that part of mind control is always reaching into your emotions. It is always trying to get you diverted from your critical thinking skills into your emotions. And then if you make a judgment while you're in that emotional state, then I can manipulate you. So that to me is some information, if I may say so, that liberal people need to consider very carefully. Because the media is totally controlled, other than you and me, right? but everything else is like, how can you rely on what's said on CNN? How can you rely on what's said in the Washington Post or especially the New York Times? Anybody can easily find the roots of the New York Times. Anybody can see how they supported the narrative again and again. 9/11. If you don't, anybody that doesn't see through the New York Times by now is just not trying. But there you go. That's their narrative. That's what pays the bills for them. If you want to get that, mortgage paid, you got to keep that job. If you want to keep that job, you got to go along with the narrative. And it's more and more and more jobs are requiring you to go along with the narrative, even if you don't believe in it. And the examples you gave are horrifying. And if you're going to get demonetized, you're going to lose your ability to buy things. You're going to you will not be able to get a bank account, a driver's license. You will be stuck with nothing if you don't go along with the narrative. And this is an emergency. I don't think this is something we can just sit back and watch anymore, because the house is on fire, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the jobs, corporate jobs, anywhere basically today, they set the frame, the Overton window, and then basically if you try to push and cross that line at any job, oh, you question vaccines? You're one of those. That's like everyone takes administration, human resources. They'll take a mental note. Okay, he crossed that line. We're gonna give him a chance. We'll see. Oh, you're questioning Ukraine? You must be some conspiracy theory. Oh, you don't accept LGBT? You think climate change isn't real? You start adding those up, and then you lose your job. I can't tell you how many people in the last couple of years. So I used to work at the Tecnológico de Monterrey, the Monterrey Institute of Technology, total globalist institution.
Mm.
Uh, uh, Great place to work. One of the top places to work in Mexico, as well as from an economic standpoint. And people ask me, like, I left 2017, and they're like, "Oh, are you gonna go back? Like, look for a job in the tech?" Because it's like everyone in their minds, it's like Harvard in Mexico, and it's like, and I'm like, "No, are you kidding me?" Like, if I don't have to, I don't, But they all have this view, and at what I experienced at the tech, I had my university courses taken away for 1 to 2 semesters because I went outside those boundaries. And I'm like, I'm not a masochist. I'm for now I'm doing financially fine that I don't have to go back there, and if I can avoid it, I would. So, but it's the same in many workplaces. That as you mentioned, that censorship. And in the chats, I thought I'd also shout out. Someone mentioned, I think, Knights of Malta, Knights of Columbus. I think before I mentioned in the past that I actually visited one of the private offices or private headquarters of Knights of Malta in Rome when I was a grad student, because
Oh, that's great.
because one of my international lawyer professor, her late husband was a Knight of Malta, and so we actually got the tour, and it was really freaky that they had like this. It's not open to the public, and right in Rome, they've got this compound and this church with all this Masonic imagery and skulls and bones and serpents. I'm not even kidding. I got photos, and so yeah, it's what you would expect from that sort of thing. And I do think Knights of Malta is part of this globalist network. I couldn't find much. It's hard to find anything really damning on the Knights of Malta, but you do know that many CIA heads, military folks around the world are members of the Knights of Malta. So, anyways, that was just a tangent.
Well, I've been exploring the Knights of Malta for a number of years now, and I can add some interesting points to what you just said. Of course, the Knights of Malta are no longer housed principally in Malta because they got kicked out of Malta, but the Rome gave them a postage stamp area in Rome that is sovereign SMOM territory.
I guess that's where I visited then. I think that's where I
That's right.
was.
You
Yeah.
were in the sovereign Republic of Malta, this SMOMs, and the SMOMs are allowed to issue passports, and that ties into the rat lines. Okay, in a big way. And then you also have the Maltese falcon, which is a symbol of the escape route for Jews through Casablanca, which the movie was a nod and a wink toward. And that also, so that, of course, then you have the American Knights of Malta, which was started back in the 20s or 30s or so. And you don't have to be a knight anymore. You don't have to be a descendant from one of the noble families of Europe anymore. You don't even have to be a Catholic anymore, but you do have to, go into that particular thing as a soldier, because these are knights, and they're sovereign, and they are militaries, the sovereign military order of Malta. So look back at the American Revolution, which I was doing with David Kramer Underdown the other night, and you find that without the Knights of Malta, America wouldn't exist. And here's why. Admiral Comte de Grasse, the Count de Grasse, was an admiral of the French fleet and a senior Knight of Malta. And the Knights of Malta had a fleet for a couple hundred years, and they competed with the pirates in the Mediterranean. And they, in the 17th century, owned some of the islands in the Caribbean. So there's a connection there to the pirates of the Caribbean and all kinds of stuff. So I guess you hit me at a time when I've been really pumped up to study the Knights of Malta once again. And of course, who else is in it? Well, the high people in the World War II military, and then a lot of the Catholic side of the Rockefeller Foundation. These guys are all SMOMs. So the SMOMs are really, really, really powerful. So that, I guess, I just wanted to add that, since you brought it up. I'd love to have seen the inside of that palace, I guess it is, in that little postage stamp sovereignty in Rome. You mentioned that it had Masonic symbols, snakes, things like that, and I just, wow. This stuff goes back a long way. like 2,000, 3,000 years. And people like think, oh, no, that's not history, just is willy-nilly. You never know what's going to happen. The things that happen in the past do not predict the future. You just have to just accept everything every day as it comes along. And that is so wrong. That is so naive. It is so uncitizenlike. You've got to get back and study your history. You've got to understand these hidden movements behind the scene, the secret societies that JFK warned us about have been very, very busy.
Yeah, I mean that just I just had the thought that we often forget. I also sometimes do forget. You know, Daniel Estelin of Bilderberg fame, who lives out here in Cancun, in Mexico, who I organized a conference for here in Guadalajara like 6 years ago. I spent a day with Estelin, which was very cool. He often approaches this stuff from he calls it conceptual perspective, and he does fascinating work. And he I like how he says it. It's basically these are projects, and he refers to these groups and civilizations like you've got these Chinese nationalist mystical elites and families, and the European, you know, black nobility. And it's like, I think one reason they've dumbed us down to have bite-sized attention spans today. Just think to today's issue for 3 minutes, and then the next, and then the next, and this politician and that politician. When in reality, I mean, think if you know but the basic history, as you said, it's we're dealing with families, oligarchies, dynasties that go back, as you said, hundreds of years at the very minimum, and then 1,000 plus, where you had these European royalty. They didn't just disappear. They were in possession of great swaths of wealth, land aristocracy, all sort, gold and silver were hidden away in different jurisdictions and places. They didn't just disappear in the Middle Ages. They just stepped out of the limelight. They just rebranded, and they're still there. These are the powers behind the EU, behind these EU, these disgusting EU apparatchiks and technocrats that we see, like Frau Ursula Gertrude von der Leyen. She makes me sick. Or any of these other EU freaks. And so these are the real powers. They're still there, and they're just they're putting together their little satanic world government. So yeah.
If you remember Casablanca at all, you remember the character of Ilsa. And Ilsa was the young Ingrid Bergman, and she was so gorgeous. And the way that she wore her hair and the way that she just generally looked and carried herself, I think Ursula is trying to be Ilsa. She has the same haircut. She's still blonde, I mean, of course, the age is hard to hide, but nevertheless, if you were trying to look like Ilsa from she's done as best as someone could do. Oh man. Oh mores, oh tempores. What can we do now? You've pointed out a number of very serious problems that we're facing in terms of the world itself. And I think, going back before my obsession with the Knights of Malta, which covered a few days recently, I was looking into the concept of Eurasia and Alexander Dugin and the question of, is Russia now trying to reassert itself as the dominant feature in the middle of Asia? And of course, we can talk in terms of the Mackinder Island and England's historical fear of a dominant power in Central Asia being personified in this thing that they're calling Eurasia now. And from the British point of view, I mean, at least from the imperial British point of view, one would think, wow, Putin is pretty smart there. He realizes Khrushchev made a mistake by letting Ukraine go. Ukraine is essential to this Eurasian policy, And when he had an opportunity, he grabbed Crimea back, and now he had another opportunity. Now he's grabbing the Donbass back. And this is, this is not just him, protecting the good Russian citizens of Ukraine. This is him exerting himself as the new emperor of the Eurasian central center of the world island empire. And that was all new stuff to me. It sounded so bizarre. I thought, are you kidding me, man? Central Europe has been devastated so many times. How could they possibly combine with Russia and create anything like the US or China in terms of world power? But now I'm thinking, yeah, maybe so. I offer you, those just random thoughts. They're just random thoughts. They don't necessarily mean anything. What do you think about Eurasia?
I'm again, I am asking often these questions, trying to square the circle, these contradictions, that we see, and I don't come to a definitive conclusion like some others in the alt uh, media, where I'm just observing. So I'm observing that we have um, real, as you're kind of alluding to, there are real geopolitical conflicts, national conflicts over competing interests between these different factions, or you can, as we were mentioning earlier, these uh, uh, dynasties. They go back, Russian and European and American and Chinese, and I kind of view it as frenemies. Like you see in these Hollywood movies where you've got these two villains, the good guy and the bad guy, and maybe they had a history where they used to be friends and now they're not. And so it's like they have, so sometimes they fight to the death, other times they make deals where there's a peace. And so that's where I view like they might cooperate on globalism, and then they will fight over real territory or markets. So I kind of feel like that's what's going on. And I do want to mention one of the top thinkers that I try to follow. He's Russian. He speaks English. Most of his work is in Russian, but his name is Andrei Fursov. And people can find some talks, interviews he's done some years back in English, or try to use the auto-translated Russian subtitles. I mean, when you listen to this guy, it's like your brain explodes. He's one of the few that really lays things out to the core. And he recently did an article someone put on Twitter in English. He's saying that the West has decided to go bankrupt. The elite is ready to burn half the world. The Western elite has come to the final conclusion: the only way to keep the old economic model is to start a new big war. Um, he says, if earlier Western leaders still believe they would manage to untangle the tangle of accumulated contradictions with the help of artificially created pandemics and deliberately harsh socioeconomic reactions to them, now they have brought the whole world into a state of war. We can say the West has decided to go bankrupt. The Western elite has ceased to differ in any way from the usual gambler who raises the stake for too long and now regrets losing money. In order now not to miss their gain, the elite are ready to burn half the world just to avoid being on the losing side. The West can no longer think of any other way to solve the current situation due to lack of time, resources, and desire. I guess might be the gist of it. And so, maybe Putin and the rest are playing the waiting game. And there's people, de-dollarization, and people say, oh, BRICS and them, they're not going to replace the dollar. I don't think the point is to replace the dollar. It's just you de-dollarize and goodbye dollar. And I don't think their goal is even to provide a replacement. It's just to dethrone the dollar, which will decrease the Western empire. And so, yeah, those are my little 2 cents.
I see the BRICS are going to create a gold-backed currency. I'd like to have a gold-backed currency, a whole lot better than a paper-backed currency, just in my own sense of personal security. But what I would, with RFK Jr. being a big promoter and defender of Bitcoin, and I suppose other non-government digital currencies, because he is opposed to CBDCs. But to say that freedom of currency should be a right, and I never thought of it that way. But my mind said, well, okay, here's how we solve it. everybody's everybody's pension plans, all their 401ks, all these things that we're hanging on to, hoping that we're going to have a nice retirement, can now be diversified to any currency in the world. And you could say, well, you know what? I think the Chinese currency really is strong. I think they're going to beat the dollar, so I'm going to put, 40% of my stuff in renminbi and 10% in rubles and 3% in Uruguayan dinero or whatever they have. In other words, the idea that I could, as my own sovereign currency investor, choose my own currencies, and then if I don't want to do something risky, I'll just get a basket of them and say I want to have a professional pick the best basket of currencies, and then invest in those the assets that are investable in those currencies, such as a Mexican company that I would need to have pesos in order to invest in. I don't know if that's even true, but just for an example, that why can't we just have currency freedom, and all of these problems would go away, because the exchange rates are all under control right now, and that's how they make so much money, just by manipulating little exchange rates overnight. So that's just an idea that's occurred to me lately. Is maybe there's a lot of ways to think outside the box that we just haven't thought about yet. But the way it looks this morning from our conversation is we're we're already going over the cliff towards this totalitarian nightmare. And like I say, I think Rome is in danger.
I mean, yeah, what you said would be great, but I think if you put some of your savings into yuan, ruble, your digital ruble, your digital yuan would expire. It would be programmable, and I
Mm.
had this bookmarked as well from the other day. Digital pound, the digital British pound, may verify age for alcohol and UK citizenship. A digital version of the British pound may feature a way to verify the holder's age and citizenship status, potentially smoothing the purchase of alcohol and tobacco. Now, think about that. That your digital currency will be able to know and to allow you whether to purchase something or not. Oh, it's alcohol. It's good, right? We will be able to prevent certain people from buying a beer.
Yeah.
Uh, so if they immediately it goes back to the algorithm good, or what Edwin Black said. I mean, if you can ban people from buying beer, you can ban people from buying bread. At the end of the day, it's the same system. So you just have some apparatchik says, "Oh no, don't let that guy buy bread. He made fun of me on social media." It's literally it's the same same thing. And so yeah, we're headed in that direction. And I think you share maybe similar feeling as I do, that the whole BRICS multipolarity world. I mean, if you just step back for a moment and you look at a lot of these countries are authoritarian-ish regimes, varying degrees. Russia, China, other countries, authoritarian light. Yeah, they haven't been expansionist like China. They're not imperial in the Western sense. That could be budding, though. They might have, in their mind, China could be saying, yes, we're going to use BRICS. Like, we're not telling anyone about it now, but they're laying the groundwork, the web, for at some point where they can be like, aha, we control this system now. But I also see multipolarity as being the road to true world federation, to new world order. So anything can go any way, as we mentioned before. They can use the left, they can use the right, they can use BRICS and multipolarity. BRICS was dreamed up by World Economic Forum young global leader who worked at Goldman Sachs. That's a fact. So the whole BRICS idea plan came from World Economic Forum and the bankers. So how am I supposed to forget about that and be like, oh, multipolarity is awesome. Putin and Xi Jinping are going to save us. The whole idea they're running with came from the World Economic Forum. So I'm skeptical.
Can I put you on the spot and ask you if you can name that person?
Oh, it's a book. I bookmarked it somewhere. Let me see if I can pull it up on my.
I mean,
Yeah, I got it. I pulled it up. It's on my Telegram, my Geopolitics and Empire Telegram channel. Um, it says BRICS was the brainchild of World Economic Forum graduate and young global leader Rupa Purushothaman. So Roopa is her name. She's on the World Economic Forum website. Her last name is Purushothaman. Purushothaman. Her and Jim O'Neill of Goldman Sachs. So yeah, there you go.
thank you, thank you. Um, when the real estate and stock market crash happened back in 2006, and it's not the first time I've had this feeling over my life. Um, I had my retirement is in a small stock market portfolio that I had, and I thought, this looks bad. This is going to keep going down. Maybe I should get out of it. But some instinct inside me said, no, no, this is important. Everybody's retirement depends upon us keeping our dollar and our stock market and our economy sound. And so if everybody did what I did and we all pulled out, then everything would crash. And I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be patriotic here, and I'm going to leave my money where it is and hope, that it comes back. But it's the right thing to do. And now I'm thinking, it's no longer seems so much like the right thing to do, especially when you have prominent people coming out in favor of Bitcoin. Because when Bitcoin came along, I'm thinking, well, oh, that's where they're going to hide their assets while they crash the dollar. They're going to put all their money in Bitcoin, and then the dollar they'll let it go, like you said, and it'll be worthless. It'll be wallpaper. And then they'll have their money in Bitcoin or some other secret hoard that they have. And then they'll repopulate the economy, only they're going to own everything. And I said, no, I don't like that. I'm going to stick with the dollar, and I think we need to defend the dollar. But man, they have sucked so much value out of the dollar by now that I don't know how much we're really defending anymore. And but
it's a corpse. I mean, it's gone. It's dead. It's lost 90, almost 100% of its value. But I think that was a fascinating point that you just mentioned about Bitcoin and the switchover. I mean, I think what we already mentioned, these aristocracy, their wealth is held in the form of land
yeah,
and businesses that they own. They own industries and corporations and land and
yeah,
gold and silver and islands and stuff. And so their
right,
wealth will stay there. But as you said, what they have in dollars will maybe go to Bitcoin. I interviewed on TNT Radio a while back. You should check him out. I'm sure he'll come on your broadcast. His name is Aaron Day, and he's running for he's running as a Republican candidate for president, but he's more libertarian. And he's successful. I think he's independently wealthy entrepreneur, really smart. He's saying CBDCs is the number one threat to us. We don't have a lot of time. Just this year we're going to be completely screwed. He talks about bank run. He says Bitcoin and gold, or self-custody Bitcoin, gold, silver, and that sort of thing. And he's egging on the bank run. And I said, why not? I think at this point, yeah, I mean, if I had money like that in the system, I'd pull it out. Yeah, I try to keep as little as I can in the banks. I don't trust them. They're debanking me. They're making it difficult to access my own funds. You read about people around the world. Some lady in New Zealand or Australia recently tried to take money, cash. She had to do home repairs. She needed $3,500 cash to pay for renovation. They're like, we don't have cash. We're not giving you cash. We don't have any. So she's like, what? She shut her account. She was able to transfer the money to another bank that would give her cash. And so I do think, why the heck not bank run? If you can take your money out, pull it out, screw them, screw the banks. It's a bit of accelerationism from my view. So yeah, let me also mention one of my past TNT guests. He does great work. He's down here in Mexico. He commented on the Telegram. He does Grand Theft Liberty Radio, Grand Theft World Liberty Radio, his program. He says McDuff and Morić sounds like a new sitcom pilot. LOL.
All right, I'll be the straight man, okay?
Well, hey, come on, me too.
All right. Well, timing is everything, and it's been a pleasure. I'm afraid our time's run out this morning, but we'll get back together again soon. And thank you very, very much, folks. These things are serious. Keep talking it up, and we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Bye now.